When I was a kid, I had selective mutism. While this sounds like an awesome X-Men superpower, it was quite the opposite. In certain situations, I didn't speak. I was mute. This happened every time I entered a social situation alone without my parents. School's always the place I dreaded the most. I'd get paralyzed with fear. It kind of looked like this. My parents had no idea I was selectively mute because at home, I was a chatterbox.
Brush your teeth, brush the camera, brush my hair.
My teachers didn't think I had a problem. They just thought I was shy. This happens a lot with anxious kids. Since they don't usually cause many problems, their struggles go unnoticed. Why did this happen to me? Well, anxiety runs in my family, so I was wired to feel it more intensely than other kids. I also remember feeling weird being one of the only brown kids in school, so I tried everything I could not to stick out more than I already did. I also learned that if I kept my mouth shut, someone else would feel bad and speak up for me. As I got older, I learned to speak up when I had to, but it still terrified me. Our brains are association machines. They make connections between situations and emotions. Mine connected people with anxiety. In middle school, I started worrying that there was something wrong with me, that I was weird. That's when my selective mutism turned into social anxiety. I panicked whenever a teacher called on me, kept thinking I had made a fool out of myself in front of kids at school, and avoided everyone except my family and a few close friends. As other kids started developing crushes, I started to believe that no one would ever be interested in me. In high school, my friend convinced me to enroll in public speaking. I thought it was a class about listening to famous public speeches. I had no idea it was going to be a semester of speaking in front of other people. I was terrified and I wanted to drop the class. But that would have meant I had to speak to the teacher and get her permission to drop out. And since I was too afraid to speak to any authority figure, I was stuck in that class. My teacher, Georgiana Hayes, started the course with each person practicing short speeches in front of one person. I was anxious, but it wasn't as bad as speaking in front of the whole class. Then we'd repeat the speech with a different partner. Things were a little bit easier the second time. We kept repeating this exercise until everyone got bored of the task. Later, we shared what was going through our heads during those speeches. To my surprise, I learned everyone worried about coming across as weird, dumb, or strange. My deepest fear, people thinking I was different, turned out to be a common fear everyone shared in these situations. We moved on to short speeches in front of a small group and then a medium-sized group, and then pretty soon we were speaking in front of the whole class. Here's the first big speech I gave in that class. It was about getting rid of bad breath. It was my passive-aggressive way of telling the person I sat next to that their breath really smelled bad. They never really got the message. I learned years later that Miss Hayes was doing exposure therapy. Avoiding situations, trying to eliminate anxiety, that was a cause of all of my problems. But when I faced my fears in incremental steps, I got used to them. My thoughts began to change, they became more realistic. It was like riding a wave. My anxiety would start, rise, and then eventually fizzle out. Learning I could write out my emotions became my superpower.
If you allow yourself to feel it, embrace it will make you more powerful than you ever imagined.
I sought out every opportunity I could to expose myself to anxiety. I joined the speech and debate team, became a rally board commissioner, and started wrestling. By the time I graduated high school, social anxiety wasn't something that bothered me anymore. It's not that I've eliminated anxiety from my life. That's impossible. I still experience it, especially when I'm speaking in front of my mentors, the first day I teach a class, when I talk in front of famous psychologists, or when I present at Comic-Con. I also developed a brief case of panic disorder after my brother died, but that's a different story. Now, I know we're supposed to feel emotions. emotions. They communicate important information. Fear warns us of potential danger. Sadness tells us a loss or setback has occurred and helps us to reflect on what's happened. Anger tells us we've been wrong. When we avoid our emotions, that's when the problems begin. That's how we fall into thinking traps. That's how we isolate ourselves. This isn't just true of anxiety, it's a case for depression, tics, body-focused repetitive behaviors, eating disorders, personality disorders, substance and addiction disorders, and many more mental health problems. This is why I became a clinical psychologist. I want to help others face difficult emotions, ride them out, and change their lives. What are your fears, and how have you overcome them? Let me know in the comments below. I'm Mattu on Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat. Be sure to like the PSYCH Show on Facebook and subscribe on YouTube.